Smart people make stupid land buys all the time. But the question is why? Well, usually because nobody teaches them how to do it right the first time. So this video is all about that, how to make a smart land purchase, even if it's the first time you're doing it. And I say this all the time, cheap land is usually cheap for a reason. So a good deal on the wrong piece of land is still a bad deal. And in today's land market, where land is selling faster and faster, it's just not sitting out there as long. Sometimes you're trying to rush to make a decision quickly to see if you want to buy the piece of property or not. But that decision alone, trying to rush this land buying process, is how sometimes brilliant people can get stuck with a bad piece of property. So whether you're buying a home site, you're buying investment property, maybe you're buying retirement property, we're going to go step by step. Things that you should avoid, things that you need to look out for. We're going to help you make a smart decision here. And I'm not sure if this is right for you, but before we get started on this, down in my comments, there's a link to a PDF where you can download. There's actually 3 land buyer checklists in there that may help you out in this process. And I'm going to cover a lot of those same things in this video. So if you're serious about buying land, go download that PDF. It's a free download. It should help you out. Okay, the first thing we're going to cover here, before you buy, maybe even before you look at buying, you need to have a crystal clear idea of what you're going to use this land for. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they shop without a plan. In their mind, they want this piece of property. Oh, I want 5 acres, I want 20 acres, I want 50 acres. They don't have a clear vision of what they're going to do with it. They just want land. And if you don't have that clear vision, you're likely to end up buying the wrong piece of property for the vision that you end up with down the road. So you need to have a really clear idea of what this land is going to do for you, not only today when you're buying it, but 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, maybe 20 years down the road. You need to have a crystal clear path for what this land is going to do for you. Are you planning to build something on it, a home or a cabin right away, or are you planning to hold off for a few years? Is it something that you need to have utilities in place for, or are you okay with being off grid? Is it something that you're going to use for agriculture, and agriculture is anything from planting crops to, horses and cows and what, deer, whatever, hunting? Or is this something that you're just going to need for privacy and just to get away from the world? You need to have these answers before you start looking for this property. And the reason this is so important is because you have to know up front, okay, what zoning regulations do you need to look for? What water rights do you need? What kind of access do you need for it? All of these things hinge on resale value, which you can't buy anything without at least considering resale value long term. The big reason you've got to have this clear up front is things like zoning, access, water rights, resale value. They all hinge on what your intended use of that property is. And I've seen other people do it. You can pick up a recreational property that seems like an absolute steal when you evaluate it from a cost per acre perspective or whatever other things are selling for in that area. But if it is just a recreational property and you want to do something on it that you actually can't do once you buy it, again, it's going to be a bad deal for you. The second part here is understand the landlocked property trap. And I know in my comments, and I see it on most of these videos, people go off, it should be illegal to sell landlocked property, or send me all the landlocked property, because I know in the state of Texas, you can get access to property. The other landowners have to give it to you. Guys, I'm telling you, that is not accurate. Being landlocked is a real thing, and it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars to get out of that landlocked position, or you may not be able to get out of it at all. And keep in mind, different states have different rules. This is not a federally legislated issue. And just because you have a survey and there might be a little road or a path leading up to the property, that does not mean that you have legal access or granted access through another person's property to get to that one. You have to make sure that you've got that access up front. Now, if you're an investor, and I would say a little bit of a speculator, and you want to buy landlocked property that does not have access right now, and then work on it and think that you may be able to get access over time and it may be a good investment for you, okay, great. But that's not for everybody. And again, understand what you want from that property. If it's a speculative play and you're going to try to flip that, get access, and sell it after the fact, great. That's a completely different use than buying a property that you think you have access to and then finding out you don't have access when you're trying to start building your cabin on it. Who knows? Even if you can get access, maybe it's 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and now the cabin that was going to cost you $300,000 is going to cost you $450,000, and you can't afford to build it anymore. So again, you can beat me up in the comments all you want. It doesn't change the fact you need to make sure that you've got access to this property. Now, on that note, there's a couple of red flags to check for. First of all, If the seller or the seller's agent is saying that there's unofficial access, okay, that is not legal deeded access. You need legal deeded access. So if you see in the listing or if somebody tells you, oh, we've got access, it's just unofficial, we've got an agreement with the other landowner, red flag, put on the brakes. When you're going through the title process and you're looking at deeds and deeded accesses and stuff like that, you should see if there is an access road on it, if it doesn't front to a county road or a state highway or something. If there is an access road, there should be a deeded access agreement that is in the documents. Okay, it's going to be legal. It's going to be filed with, it may be the county, it may be the city, it may be the state, depending on where you're looking, but there is going to be a filed deeded access that the title company or the fee officer, the attorney that's doing the closing, should be able to pull up for you. If you're under contract and they're having trouble finding these deeded access documents, again, you need to put the brakes on and figure out why. Maybe it was just misfiled and that's something you can deal with, but don't close that property until you have answers. And going back to the first point where the seller's been using it and the other neighbor's been cool with it, well, if the neighbor that's been cool with the seller using it doesn't like you, or they decide, you know what, I've been having somebody use this for too long, I really don't want to give anybody access anymore. Okay, what's to stop them from doing that? I mean, just a simple change of mind could end up, costing you, again, tens of thousands of dollars or a lot of time. Maybe you can get access, but it's going to take you a year and a half to do. And again, if interest rates go up more, or if the cost of building goes up more or something like that, or you lose a job in a year and a half, now you're not going to be able to execute on the plan that you had originally. So before you write an offer, it's always best to verify access. You can call the county, you can call the title company, and you can say, hey, I'm looking for deeded access to this property. You should be able to track it down. This is public record. And if you don't know who to reach out to in that area, it's a good time to remind you. If you're looking in Texas, reach out to me. I know the people to put you in contact with. And if you're looking in some other state, but you don't have a local team on the ground, and by local team, it might be a contractor, it might be a lender, it might be a realtor. If you don't have those local assets where you're looking to buy that property, reach out to me, even if it's not in the state of Texas. I've got a lot of contacts all around the U.S., and I can probably put you in contact with somebody who can help you out in very specific locations. So reach out. Third section of this, let's talk about is utilities. So we're talking about power, we're talking about water, we're talking about wastewater or septic. When we're talking about these things, do not assume. Ask before you buy. I was recently just analyzing a property up in Colorado for myself, and I can see from Google Earth that there's power lines that are running nearby, but I have got to reach out to the local power company and ask them, hey, I'm looking at this piece of property. I noticed that there's power lines, right around the property. Can I get access to those power lines? Can I actually get power to the property? Again, I have to check with those local resources. Do not just assume that just because the neighbor's got water, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got water. I've seen situations where there's a municipal water supply, but they don't have capacity on that line anymore. All the other houses that are connected to it have taken all of the capacity off of that line. They will not sell any more access. They're going to need to upgrade that line before the property that I've seen is going to be able to actually tap into it. So again, don't assume just because everybody has access that you have access. You've got to ask the powers that be, the companies that own those utilities. You've got to ask them about it ahead of time. And speaking of water, okay, if you don't have municipal water supply, again, if you're out in a rural area, you're probably not going to have a water line running in the ground. Can you dig a well? Don't assume you can dig a well, okay? In Texas, most counties, they have a well log. You can call the county, you can find it on the website. And I know in Colorado, that's the case too in a lot of other states. But go and look in the well logs for that area and see where that property is. Do you see other wells drilled around it? Click on them. A lot of times now in our age of information, you can see the depth of the well. You can see how much water that well's producing. And it's not a perfect science just looking online, but at least gets you going in the right frame of mind or the frame of reference for it. After you've verified there's other wells around, or even before, you can reach out and find well digging companies over there. Tell them, hey, I'm looking at this property. I need to make sure that I can put a well on there, and ask them. They'll help you out. At the end of the day, they want you to pay them $20,000 to put a well in. That's how they make their money. So they're going to help you figure out, yes, you can put a well in, or no, you can't. Again, don't just assume. And then the last part of this is wastewater. Is there wastewater available from a municipality? Okay. Again, rural areas, you're probably not going to have that. So can you put a septic system in? We talk about perk tests all the time. Okay. A perk test or a percolation test is going to find out, can the land actually hold and absorb the effluent, right? Or, do you have to do a special type of system for a septic on that piece of property? Now, there's really not an online way to figure that out, but again, local contacts, your local team, reach out to a contractor, reach out to a local septic company and ask them, again, give them the address. Hey, I'm looking at this property. Can I put a septic on this? Reach out to the county. Are you guys allowing septic permits to be pulled for this type of property? Again, the property that I'm looking at in Colorado, it's A1 zoning, which is agricultural zoning. There's no septic system on the property now. I have to reach out to the county to find out, can I install septic on A1 property? Okay, that's a zoning. The county has regulation over that. Maybe I can't, maybe I can, but I have to find out. The other thing is, and this goes back to the first point, where you have to have your very clear, detailed idea of what you want before you start, because septic systems are not sized by bathrooms. They're not sized by the number of people in a house. They're sized by the number of bedrooms that you want to build. So if you want to build a 2-bedroom cabin, that's a specific septic tank size. If you want to build a 6-bedroom house, that's a completely different septic tank size. But you can combine units on one septic tank. Well, usually you can. Again, reach out to the county or the area that you're looking to build in. But if you put in 3 2-bedroom cabins, as long as you can get all the septic to the same septic tank, and that may take pumps and things like that, but as long as you can get all the septic to the same septic tank, a 6-bedroom septic tank will take care of 3 2-bedroom cabins. So if you're considering a compound, that's something to keep in the back of your mind. But again, don't take my word for it. Make sure you're reaching out to local people to ask them, hey, this guy on the internet told me I could do this. Is that the case? Again, generally, I think you're going to be okay doing that, but find that out up front. Don't just assume. Oh, and on that note, this is a little bit of a pro tip. Always try to plan for a little bit more than what you need. And it's at a certain point, you have to go more to a commercial style septic if you get too big. But the point being, if your plan right now, hey, I want to build a 3-bedroom house, great. I would probably plan for a 5-bedroom septic. It's going to cost you a little bit more up front, but if you have the extra capacity on the septic system, you can always add that guest house or that casita or expand that house later. Remember, if you add bedrooms, you have to add septic capacity. So always plan for a little bit more, even if it's going to cost you a few extra $1,000s now, because it's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper now than going back and adding a separate septic system after the fact or trying to expand the current one, if you want to add on later. So always plan for a little bit of overage when you're doing that. Okay, fourth thing we're going to talk about is always read the fine print when it comes to deed restrictions, zoning, and HOAs or POAs. If you've never heard of a POA, it's like an HOA. It's just a property owners association. You'll more likely in rural areas, you'll run into POAs before you'll run into HOAs. But same type of thing, even if the lot is unrestricted, that doesn't mean that you can always do anything that you want with the property. And again, you can argue with me and say, I bought a piece of property, it's unrestricted, I can do whatever I want. Well, that's fine until you go to start building on the property and you find out that there's an architectural control committee and they get the county to issue a stop work order on you because you didn't get your plans approved through that ACC. Yes, that happens. And yes, it is a pain in the butt. So you have to know who has the ability to control what you do on that property. And there's some properties that are truly unrestricted and you can do whatever you want. But again, that's why I say read the fine print. Make sure when you start the title process, find out, are there deed restrictions? A lot of times there's seller imposed deed restrictions. So maybe this seller or the seller before them or somebody had 1,000 acres and broke it up into 10-acre pieces or whatever, and they imposed seller imposed deed restrictions. Okay, they can do that. Maybe they have a family house that they're going to keep there forever, and they don't want anybody to build within 500 feet of them, or they don't want anything that's bigger than 3,000 square feet, or they don't want a height that's bigger than 25 feet. Okay, those are real seller imposed deed restrictions that I've seen on properties. So you need to make sure that you understand that up front to make sure that your plan coincides with the restrictions that are on that property. And it's not just owners that can put restrictions on properties. Municipalities can put restrictions on them also. There's areas around here in Central Texas where you can't take out any tree over a certain size. Now, normally that's going to be within ETJs, extraterritorial jurisdictions, or maybe even within the city limits. But even in some county areas, you can't take out a tree before you get it allowed by the county or whoever that governing body is. And when I say a tree, I don't mean like brush, right? I mean trees. They call them heritage trees. But you might want to know that up front if you're going to have to, okay, I've got to take out this 150-year-old oak tree, and now the county's going to make me go plant 30 other trees just to make up for the one that I put out, or the county's going to charge me $1,000 an inch for any tree that I take out over 12 inches in diameter. again, real situations, real things that I've seen. Make sure you understand who's got restrictions on that property before you close on it. Okay, the fifth part of this is let's talk about flood zones and other hidden, we'll call it building costs or construction costs. And I'm putting these together because if you're in a flood zone, you can get out of it if you build up high enough. And there's a few other caveats around that, but it may take special building to get out of it. But I've seen people, they fall in love with a piece of property that's down along a creek or in a low water area, and it's dry, right? It's dry 10 months out of the year. But then they find out FEMA has it designated as a zone A, which is a 100-year floodplain. Okay, yes, you can get flood insurance. It's going to be expensive. I've seen flood insurance cost an additional $2,500, $3,000 a year. If you're okay with that, okay, fine. But again, figuring this out ahead of time is really, really important. And one of the biggest things on this is if you're paying cash and you want to self-insure, okay, that's fine. You can do that. You can build wherever you want. And if a flood run, floods your house out or washes it down or whatever, you have to rebuild it and then just deal with the federal government for whatever cleanup fees they assess you. But if you're getting a loan on this, your lender will not loan on a house that's in a floodplain unless it has flood insurance. So you're kind of hamstrung. You have to put flood insurance in place if you're getting a mortgage on the house. And the other part of this, again, hidden costs for construction. One of the things that I love is I love massive views. And it's great, but if the only way to get a massive view from a specific property is to build on a slope that's like this, okay, that's going to take additional engineering. Maybe you have to excavate and put in stem walls. And yeah, you might end up with a really cool basement out of it, but excavation's not cheap. Stem walls aren't cheap. Maybe you need to talk to a contractor about going with a pier and beam foundation or something like that. But at the end of the day, you would like to know that ahead of time because it could affect your budget. Again, anything that's not just a flat piece of property, it's gonna affect how much your foundation costs. The more you know about that up front, the better off you're gonna be. One of the best people to talk about this is either an experienced agent, somebody that's done it in the area, or a contractor. Again, having those local resources, just vitally important when you're doing this. Going back to floods for a second, because I just thought about this. If you, and I talk about it all the time, make sure that you get a new survey when you buy a property. And you're not gonna order a survey before you're under contract. So ask them if they have a survey, because recent surveys, they delineate what is and what is not in the floodplain. You should be able to see it on the survey if it's a fairly recent one. And fairly recent, I'll say in the last 5 to 10 years or so, depending on the location, right? And again, get your own survey and make sure that they're putting elevations on there so you can see what's in the flood zone and what's not. And again, even if it's in the flood zone, you can always build up and get it out of the flood zone. But depending on how high that goes, that may completely blow your budget. So just make sure you know ahead of time. The next massive mistake that people make on this, and I think this is point 6, is don't assume, and you're gonna hear that a lot, right? Don't assume. It makes an ass out of you and me. We've talked about that before, and you've probably heard that since you were a little kid. But don't assume that you're getting water rights with the property. Don't assume you're getting mineral rights. Don't assume that you're getting timber rights. One of the worst things imaginable that I can imagine is you're wanting to buy this property, and it's this great wooded property and it's absolutely beautiful, and you fall in love with it. It's exactly where you want to build your cabin. But then you find out that somebody else has got timber rights and they can come in and they can cut down all the trees. I can't even imagine that's happening. So again, don't assume that you're getting those rights. Verify along the way that those rights are transferring with the property. And mineral rights are one of the hardest ones, right? Because at this point, especially in somewhere like Texas where there's been oil, most mineral rights have been reserved. And then if you get out into the western states, it's really hard to get water rights because the states have reserved the water rights. But again, verify, understand what you own, what rights do you have based on what you own, and more importantly, probably, who owns what you don't, and what can they do to your property without compensating you or even telling you that they're going to do it. All right, part 7 here. Know what your exit strategy is. And if this is going to be a legacy property and you're going to keep this property forever, it's going to go to your kids and then your grandkids and your great grandkids. Okay, great. Set up the will correctly, get a good probate attorney, and let it be taken care of. But that's not reality for everybody. So understanding land is not liquid. Okay, you can't go, well, I guess unless you have a gold mine on it or something, maybe it's a little bit liquid. But it may take time to sell land, okay? Especially if you make changes to it or you put something on it that somebody else doesn't want, you're gonna be looking for a niche buyer, somebody that's a lot like you, okay? We've been told since we were, little bitty that we're all unique, right? We're all little unique snowflakes, okay? So if you can't find a buyer that is just like you, that loves what you've done to the property, you're going to end up giving up money in the long run, and you may lose money based on what you paid for the land and the improvements that you put on there. So understand your exit strategy up front. Some other things to understand about it is, let's say that you don't want to have to sell your land, but you run into a bind with, with money. You need some quick money. Well, can that parcel be split? Can you subdivide it and sell off part of it and at least keep maybe your favorite part or half of it or something like that? Not all areas can you subdivide a piece of property. Again, sometimes it's deed restrictions, sometimes it's county level or state level restrictions. If it's smaller than a certain size, you may not be able to subdivide it in certain states. So understanding all of that up front and knowing, okay, if I do get into a bind, how do I get out of this? Can I keep part of my property? Another thing is, are you buying in an area that's growing, somewhere that's, people are seeking out, or are you buying something that's really, really remote? If you're buying in an area that's, close to metros and people are moving out there and, the roads are being improved and stuff like that, okay, it's probably going to be a little bit easier to get rid of if you have to. If you're buying in a truly remote part of the state or the US for that matter, it can be harder to get rid of. Again, know that up front, know what that exit strategy looks like. And to me, if I'm buying a piece of property, I would love the peace of mind up front that I know even if I had to get out of it tomorrow, I could get out with a profit. Okay, that's the best feeling in the world. Doesn't matter what happens. Even if you sell below market value, if you can still get out of it with a profit or not losing any money, man, that's peace of mind. That's what I'm looking for. And a lot of times when you're thinking about that, you're not going to be able to really figure that out just looking online and Zillow and Realtor.com in other states and things. So again, reminding you, have that local team in place. If you need referrals, whether it's in Texas or outside of Texas, let me know. I've got people that I know everywhere that I can put you in contact with. And just to reiterate, if you take nothing else from this video, set clear goals, confirm legal access, verify utilities, always, always, always check for restrictions, check your mineral rights, water rights, and timber rights, and always, always, always think 2 steps ahead in case you have to get out of that property. Those are the most important things.